Due to the overwhelming successes of last week's videos, noting especially the old Busthead review, which was my worst performing video in I'd say a good year or two, I've decided to go with a Cold Steel Code 4 video this week. Okay, I was actually planning on doing it. Last week, however, I didn't get the time to finish the script. While I only release 2 to 3 videos a week, I often spend about 20 to 30 hours working on those videos. Last week I only had about 8 hours for 8 minutes worth of videos. It was either beer videos or no videos. And I can see now that I chose poorly. Alright, let's get to the dimensions section of the Code 4 review, like the overall length and weight. I spent the first part of last week near Virginia Beach. I think it's called First Landing State Park. What did you do? Blade size and cutting edge. You're like, well, I didn't watch a beer video, that's for sure. Well, I personally shot some playing with knives footage at the campsite. Handle size, grip area. A few of you who also follow me on Instagram saw some of that. So, thanks for sawing that. I even managed to shoot a beer review too while I was there, which of course I now understand was a terrible choice. The Code 4 from Cold Steel is one of their more reasonably proportioned knives. Not small, a reasonable weight, good steel, and looks more like a useful tool than a murder weapon. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
I carry cold steels primarily for self-defense.
Oh, you must be in military or law enforcement. Oh, okay, cool. Well, at least you don't have to sharpen them often. Like I was saying earlier, if your job doesn't involve stabbing or knife fights, I mean, it could also be those things, but even if it's not, let's also take a look at the Code 4's blade. You might be reminded, Cold Steel is currently switching out their higher-end blade steel from CTS XHP to the Chris Reeve high-end MSRP favorite S35VN. Now, for some reason though, Cold Steel can keep their prices below $100 on those knives. Weird. The Code 4, at least this one is, CTS XHP, and can be had in plain or serrated. Tanto-style blades, clip-point style blades, and spear point, and some combination of those in between. Just go look at Blade HQ's website. But this review is about the clip point non-serrated, which would be the one I would choose. The blade is a good old-fashioned, easy-to-see hollow grind, which means that if you look at the blade from an angle, you can see it curves inward, concave. I say that for those people who are, here for the beer reviews only. Just kidding. This blade is a loaner that I promised to treat real nice from Cool as Shit subscriber Crank. Actually, he said just don't break it in half, which I can do. The blade is sharp, and in my experience, Cold Steel knives CTS XHP holds up well to use and sharpens very easily, which may have a lot to do with it being a similar edge angle to my Spyderco Sharp Maker. The lock is handled by the tough and of course batonable Triad lock, which is a jacked up version of a lockback mechanism. It's deployed by thumb studs, and with a little bit of practice you can get consistent deployments, although it is no well broken in axis lock style smoothness. Lock disengagement is pretty stiff, but I can do it with my thumb in the right place. Hard press, flick downward. Closing one-handed can be accomplished this way if you have your index finger blade forward, press, the flick, and the ricasso hits your finger. You will need to get practice with this though, because if your finger is in the wrong place, you'll get a cut. I haven't yet, but that's because I'm advanced. And if you don't believe me, look at the channel name. If you want something smooth and silky to fidget with, then don't buy something with a Triad lock. The blade can be flung down hard with a certain wrist pop, and it's deployable without using the thumb studs this way, because people want to know that. The handle is smooth and comfortable. I don't consider knives this smooth, super friendly in wet or lotiony conditions, just mainly because there's not additional handle traction other than your super manly grip. I don't often use my knives in wet conditions, however, it's something you may want to consider. The handle does have finger grooves though, which fit my hand pretty well, no sharp areas, and the interior of the aluminum handle is slightly edgy if you're a wuss though. The handle's aluminum is gray anodized, and if you guessed it's 6061 aluminum, by just looking at it, there's definitely something wrong with you. The pocket clip. It's reversible to the right or left side in a tip-up configuration only, which is, as you know, the most tactical for people who are right or left-handed. I'm a righty, so it's tip up, blade backward in my right pocket. The clip is super tight, however the combination of the I read that wrong, polished clip, and the aluminum scales makes this an easy pocket slider. It goes in and out pretty easy and stays in there when it's there. Although the knife is a tad on the tall side, it's slim and light, so it's easy to forget it's in your pocket sometimes. Not something you say about many cold steels. Comparisons, is it that time already? The tortured soul whose purgatory is YouTube says, God, I hope so. Changing times, changing punishment for the damned, right? Gotta update it. First up, the Code 4, probably the first cold steel I have ever seriously considered everyday carrying. It's light and pocket-friendly enough that it fits my basic requirements, which is around 4 ounces or less. It's a little over, but I'll let it slide. I like some of my Spydercos and Benchmades more for their fidgetability and looks, plus I have huge sponsorship deals from those two makers, so, there's that. I'd like to say fidgetability isn't a consideration for me in a knife, but that would make me a liar, and I have never lied in my entire life. May God strike me dead. And if I finish this video, it either proves one of two statements are true. Let's hope it's the God understands satire statement. I also have had my eye on the broken skull too. I should really ask Cold Steel to send me a free one of those. Next is the Wee Knife 617, also lent to me by Crank. If I had to pick one of these two knives, I'd go with the Cold Steel because I like the way it looks better. Prefer CTS XHP over Chinese D2 or China D2. And also, I feel like Lynn Thompson's in my pocket whenever I carry it. Watch that review to understand my knife feelings on that one a bit better. Or don't like, 90% of my subscribers, which is actually an accurate statement. Let's look at some less practical cold steels because those are basically all I own right now. The beautiful to me and super slicey Cold Steel Colossus. This one is also tough and strong. Not as batonable in theory as this one. Note to people who use knives the way manufacturers say not to use them. If there's a thumb disc on the top of the knife for deployment, repeatedly hitting that thumb disc with a fucking log will break the tiny screw holding the disc, which is obviously basic logic. Thumb studs for deployment that are on the sides of the blade will avoid most of the wax. So, thumb studs are better for batoning? I don't know. Cold Steel Frenzy. If you haven't seen this video, check it out. It's long and thin and impractical for my uses, but I like the way it looks. It's also huge, but a different kind of huge than the Colossus. What else do we have? Okay, another lockback lightweight knife. My OG nice knife, my Spyderco Endura 4. As my knife tastes have evolved and my spending habits have devolved, I've moved on to other knives. Most regular people who need a useful tool and are not idiots, who don't need to own more than one single pocket knife at a time, would be hard-pressed to find a nicer knife than this one. Forget about super steels, fidget locks, Stone Cold Steve Austin endorsements, jeweled liners, Chris Reeve, pretty social media purple knives, Blade HQ, Nick Shabazz, Tovarish Works, and above all else this channel. Buy this knife, call it a day, and never watch YouTube again. Save yourself money, buy a reasonable car, save up for a house and a cul-de-sac, maybe even buy matching curtains for your current rental. But before you do any of that, let's wrap it up. Did I say it's a good cold steel? It is YouTube, and I do have to restate things several times. Is saying restating several times still restating? Could I have just not said several times? But I'll say it again for those people who are like, I couldn't tell if you liked the knife. Why does it matter? Do you like it? The knife may be a bit too big for some people's everyday carry. Everyone has a different too big. It also might be slick for people who are constantly drenched in the blood of their victims. But it's still a good knife with good steel and useful. If you like these sorts of reviews but don't like beer reviews, like many of my current subscribers, then subscribe anyway. I promise to disappoint you only a few times a month. Pretend like I'm a pretty good stepdad who also rustles your hair and says, hey, maybe I'll take you to Chuck E. Cheese. But really, he forgets to. You're like, that sounds pretty specific. Do you want to talk about it? Give the video a thumbs up, unless you're this guy right here, my favorite subscriber ever, or may God strike me dead. Follow me on Instagram where I give shit away sometimes. I gave away a Bros recently. You're like, no, man, I'm good. I think I'll just stick to here. Leave a comment. Thanks for watching.